Welcome, everyone. You're listening to the Expressed and Orgasmic Living podcast, the show that teaches you how to go from feeling stifled and suffocated in your life to expressed and orgasmic. Here you will receive tips on how to honor yourself, fulfill your desires, and feel truly alive again. I'm your co-host, Renee Faith, Orgasmic Soul Freedom Coach.
And I'm your co-host, Sherrie and Renee, Life Expression Coach. Welcome to this week's episode.
Welcome to this episode on Expressed and Orgasmic Living. I am your co-host, Sherrie Linnell.
And I'm your co-host, Renee Faith.
And today we're talking about helping our kids honor their true identity through decolonization.
Decolonizing their education.
Yes, decolonizing their education. Absolutely. So.
Deep breath. Woo. You know, it's a big topic, and I think the phrase decolonizing education has been become a little bit more mainstream since the whole George Floyd and Black Lives Matter kicked off that year. But my story actually started a year before the George Floyd murder, and that whole conversation. It started in my daughter's kindergarten class. Where her best friend was a white girl with blonde curly hair, and my daughter one day was like, I want blonde hair. Mm-hmm. So that was like the starting of it, that I recognized, you know, her not accepting and honoring her true self, her true identity, right? Not owning her own beauty. Then there were some, racist incidents that happened at the school, which I touched on in earlier episodes, which kind of led me to like this awareness that I need to have conversations about race with my kids. Mm-hmm. We were in the car one time, and she was sharing a joke, a racist joke that her friend had shared with her, and both my kids in the back were laughing. And I had to pause, and I looked in the rearview mirror, and I was like, you guys know that you're Chinese, half Chinese, right? And their response was like, no, we're American. And it was like, I was doubled over in guilt for taking them out of Brooklyn, which was super diverse, and bringing them into the country where it's predominantly white. So now I'm racked with guilt. Did I make the most wrong decision of my life as a parent? And it felt like a heavy task to now come down to like this 3D earth plane, because I was such a spiritual mentor, spiritual coach, living in this non-dualistic reality. We're all souls. I don't want to see color. And brought down to the fact that like, these conversations are necessary, because at the end of the day, my kids are still living in this world that is, in this society, in this country that is full of, systemic racism. Mm-hmm. And that's what jump-started our journey to decolonizing education. That's when I realized this was necessary.
Yeah, it's interesting that you felt the guilt of moving from Brooklyn, that was very diverse, to the mountains, right? I felt the same way. I took my kids out the hood and brought them here, and I was very worried that they would lose who they are, or not so much lose who they are, but like not grow to know who they are, because they were very young when we moved here, right? So they didn't even really have much of an identity to begin with, so coming here into the mountains, and there's not many of us here. I was really worried about that, how that would impact them and how they would see themselves, like Rachel, and I don't think, my daughter experienced something kind of like that annoyed me, and I was actually able to give her a teaching lesson about it, where her hair is super curly and she wears it down. She was wearing it down, and it was wet and calm, and then it puffed up, and some friends of hers, they thought it was funny that it did that and that she should try straightening it. And so she came home and she wanted me to flat iron her hair. I was like, for what? She goes, I want straight hair. So she eventually got the straight hair, but I had to like let her know that the hair that grows from your head is beautiful, you know, and that's part of who you are. You don't have straight hair that comes out of your head. Your hair is filled with melanin and it's curly like your mother's hair, you know. And so she gets it, you know. She now understands that her hair is different and it's beautiful, and she'll let people know about it too.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
But that was one of the approaches I took too, right? It was I started to look for racial mirrors in books and in movies. I wanted for her to see Asian American females as the protagonists in the book, the main characters in the movies. And so just kind of reaffirming that, look, you are beautiful and you are on the screen. It's so important that we see ourselves in these characters in the books and the movies, because otherwise you think the standard of beauty, right? Or the standard of, you know, what this is all that's accepted, white and blonde hair and blue eyes.
Yes.
It does so much to our self-esteem.
Yep, it does. It definitely does. And I was looking back at some pictures of my childhood, and a lot of those baby dolls I had were not Black, you know. And I remember clearly and plainly when I got my first Black doll. It was a walk with me doll, you know, and it was like almost my size. It would walk with you, you know. And I was so like in love with that doll, and I loved playing with that doll. I didn't really care about my other dolls. And so in my adult life, I get it, but I didn't see, well, I was too young to see it. I was about 5 years old when I got that doll, but like, I guess intuitively, I knew that even at that age that I needed representation. I needed my own doll to look like me, you know? So
it felt good to you. It felt empowering.
Yeah, it did feel good. And when Black Panther came out, we didn't go to the movies because I didn't want to deal with crowds, but we did watch it at home together and made it like a family thing. And my daughter couldn't take her eyes away from it. And, you know, and even though it was fiction, you know, she loved seeing all the people that, you know, looked like her mother, looked like her in there. And I feel like now we're getting close to having that diversity in a lot of things and that representation. Like I see on Netflix, there's a whole genre for Asian movies that I like to watch.
Well, they're not Asian American movies. They're like Korean movies. That's a whole nother
yeah, Korean.
Maybe we'll get to it, but
that's not, oh, see, I'm about to learn something right now.
It's a very different story. It's a very different life. It's a very different culture to be Asian American versus to be Asian, right?
Right. Okay. So we'll talk about that sidebar because I need some education there. But see, that's the whole point. Like we need that education, not just our children, but even us as adults. There are some things that we colonize as a kid, right? And it's still in us, and it's still kind of shaping our beliefs and what we think we know.
Yeah. Let me tell you about the impact of not having representation through childhood, right? So for me, we touched on this in the last episode, I struggle with internal racism. So as an adult, I have a hard time being with East Asians that look like me, that I don't know. Because once you know somebody and there's a heart-to-heart connection, the looks don't matter. But when you don't know somebody, so for example, I did a Zoom call with a Chinese American. She was a former New Yorker, moved to California. We did it on Zoom. It was just a connection call. She was a fellow coach. And I realized that I couldn't look at her in the eye, and we were on Zoom.
Wow.
I couldn't be with her And this is after I had the insight from my coach that like somewhere deep down inside, I really thought I was white, right? And so this was my attempt to heal that internal racism. Let me be on this call with this Asian American professional. And I couldn't be with her. And it was so uncomfortable. And it's just because because I didn't have any of that representation in media. I didn't see myself on the screen. I didn't see myself. There were no Asian dolls back then. I think Mulan might have been the first Asian doll that came to existence. That was much later on in my life. That might have been like mid to late high school, Mulan, I don't remember. But because I didn't have that, I now judge how I look because it's not the standard of beauty. I don't want to own this East Asian face because I was judged for it growing up.
Right.
And that's what it does. It creates internal racism when there is no representation. Racial mirrors are everything. And so I attempted to bring, that racial mirroring to my kids. And that coincided right around the whole George Floyd murder. And soon after, with the surge of the Black Lives Matter across this country, talk about decolonizing education started to get louder.
Right.
And I discovered a Facebook group called Woke Homeschooling. It's by a woman named Delina Price McPaul. I think I'm saying her last name right, Delina Price McPaul. Her website is wokehomeschooling.com. She's got a great curriculum because I've been homeschooling. This is our 5th year homeschooling. So I was looking for curriculum, and she has a history curriculum that focuses history through a decolonized lens,
right?
Basically focusing on, making sure all the authors of the books that we're reading, the textbooks, the authors are people of color. So it's lived experience being shared versus majority of history books out there are written by white people, white historians, talking about Native American experience when it wasn't lived experience.
Right. It was their judgment. Yeah. So this curriculum now, because my kids are in public school system, does this curriculum, can it extend to them? Like,
it certainly can. It's just, it comes with a list of books that the Delina, the creator of the curriculum, she's vetted, she's used with her own kids, that she's a veteran homeschooler.
Right.
And so you can, use the textbooks or use some of the historical fiction books that she recommends also. That's always fun. That could just be added reading for your public school kids.
Yeah.
But, or not. The whole point, the biggest lesson for me working through part of that curriculum the other year was research the authors. That was my biggest lesson. And teach my kids that it's important to research the authors. Really, don't just believe what you're hearing, but understand who you're hearing it from. So important, right?
Yep. And that advice extends to us adults too, because I can't tell you how many, because I practice hoodoo, right, which is an African American type of magic, and as I'm, even though I'm a practitioner, I'm constantly learning new things, right? So I have to look for sure. I have to research authors of books that I'm interested in. I have to research the authors. Now, remember, this is an African American practice. This is a practice that Africans who came to America in slave days, created this as a way of creating protection for themselves spiritually and such. So it's important that I know that the author is African American, Black. So when I see that the author is not, oh my God, we can't have nothing. They are colonizing something that's ours, Yeah. So I make sure that the books that I'm getting are not non-African American.
Yeah. Let's talk about that decolonized mindset a little bit, right? Like, I remember growing up with immigrant parents, and this connects to that everything coming through that white voice, that white filter, that white writing, everything coming through that whitewash. having immigrant parents, they could have said one thing to me about whatever it was, right? And if a white person said the same exact thing that my mother said in her accent, I would have believed it from the white voice, but I would have dismissed it from my mother's voice.
Yeah.
I took the white voice as authority over my parents' accented voice. That's a decolonized mindset. I had to, so even on my spiritual journey, I left Buddhism because of the language barrier that, you know, my family couldn't answer the questions that I had. I left Buddhism, and there's different reasons too, but my whole spiritual journey took me to all these white spiritual teachers that were teaching sometimes ancient stuff from Asia, but it was always the white voice, the white, you know, that I gave authority to. It had more weight for me.
Yeah.
But I got clear only the other year as I working to decolonize my kids' education that that's the decolonized mindset, because Britain took over Burma. Everybody thought learning English and hearing, you know, English spoken was better, smarter. It just had more weight. Like that was the preferred, right? And so it all started there. I don't want that for my kids, like, because that dishonored my family and my identity as an Asian, right? Like it just, I was wanting to be more like the colonizers, more like the oppressors, if you will. I wanted to side with the majority and not align myself with the people who felt oppressed. That felt better, safer. And that was my journey. And that's how I developed internal racism over the years, unconsciously though, right? And so now with our children, with my kids, I'm trying to make sure that they really honor their true identity, own it, be proud of it, and also see like how much of Asian American history there is. Because us being on the East Coast, it's super fresh. There's lots of immigrants everywhere. You go to California, you go to Vancouver, you have Asian Americans that have been here for 5 generations. Here in New York, we don't get any of that history. It wasn't taught in public schools. So making sure that is being shared with my kids so that they have an easier time accepting who they are and their identity in this country.
Yeah, and I mean, I also hoping someday that the public school system will get with the program, you know. I am trying really hard to get away from celebrating Thanksgiving. I'm really truly trying to get away from it, because I know what that means. Like really, I know what that really means. And there's really nothing to celebrate about, you know. But I have to, you know, I make the decision on when it's when it's time to take a stand as far as like the family goes. But I started saying things like, oh, this is Friendsgiving, you know, and this is Indigenous Peoples Day. You know, I start saying it. I'm using those words as a way to let people recognize that I do not acknowledge this day as a Thanksgiving day because of what it means.
Because of all the bloodshed, yeah.
Yes. I mean, it breaks my heart, and it reminds me of my people when we came over. You know, we were brought here in horrific ways and made to do horrific things. And still, for some reason, well, not for some reason, like we went through so much pain and blood from coming over here, being brought here, and then having the Indigenous people that were here first go through what they go through. Like you can't even measure like which was the worst situation, right? It's like,
well, I did a timeline, a U.S. history timeline, you know, from, you can clearly see here's when slaves were first brought to the country. And, you know, Juneteenth is finally when the last slave was freed.
Yeah.
And then you see, I have a red line at the bottom, which spans wider than the slavery timeline because it's 500 years of Indian wars.
Yes.
500 years of Indian wars, nonstop. To the
Really
very last Apache.
question of which was worse. Whew.
And it's
I
not
mean,
taught.
yeah, it is. It makes me mad on so many levels, you know, and I follow a lot of indigenous people like on TikTok. I love TikTok. And to hear their stories, you know, it's like this is what needs to be in textbooks. This story, these stories, not the ones where they were conquered and, you know, going to get mad.
I don't want people to get into their heads with it, because the way we're approaching it is, it's a healing for our children.
Yes.
It's a healing for our children that's necessary. We want to have these conversations with them. We want to show them history from a fair lens,
Yes.
an honest lens. And we want to make sure that they know that they're people who look like them, we're part of that history, so that no one can tell them that they're not American. Because fact is fact. I'm going to have great-grandchildren who look like me in this country. Fifth, you know, whatever it is, fifth generation, fourth generation, my great-grandchildren will still be told, go back home to your country, go back to China, right? Like facts, even though they don't know any other language but English by that point in time.
Right.
And still, so it's even that much more important for them to know, no, we had, you know, a part, we helped build this country as well.
Absolutely.
That's a healing. Otherwise, now you're getting into the self-worth issues where they're going to be like, well, I'm not good enough. You know, I'm not worthy to call myself an American. I don't know, but it impacts your self-esteem and your self-worth and how you view yourself. We want to save our kids if we can, right? From all the crazy healing that they'll have to endure as adults in this country, especially people of color.
Yeah, we could minimize that experience for them as adults. That would be amazing. But because, you know, wow.
And in so doing, also heal society a bit.
Yeah.
You know, our little contribution to it, right?
Absolutely.
It starts with conversations.
And now what is that they are trying to ban from schools?
Critical race theory.
Yeah, CRT. Is that what that truly is? Because I haven't really looked into it, because it was just something I felt was going to annoy me even more, just hearing the opposing views of it. Like, I get what it's for. I'm for what it's for, but am I thinking correctly that that's a form of decolonization, what that is an attempt to do?
I would invite people to do their own research. CRT is something that they do not teach in schools. They teach in, I believe they teach it in law school.
Oh.
Teach it in law school, but somehow having, you know, an open discourse about the open discourse about having multiple sides to history, right? You have the colonizers' side of history, you have the indigenous side of history. Just simply sharing both sides of history is being lumped together with this thing called critical race theory. It's not one and the same.
Okay.
People are super confused and they're attacking it because people don't want to change how history is taught. You know, people don't want to, they don't want the boat to be rocked, because whoever is on the top of the ladder, whoever the top dog is, who wants to feel threatened to be knocked off the top of the ladder? You know, and that's what white fragility is. And, you know, look, CRT, but what we're talking about here are these conversations that I would love to see in public schools, you know, both sides of history taught, so that there could be this real dialogue of like, well, what was the experience of the indigenous? What was the experience of the slave that had, you know, that was chained and you know, and right? Like, what was why did that happen? When we share both sides of history, we can get to the heart of what happened. And when you feel into the heart of the victim's story, You never have the full story till you actually hear the victim side of the story, right? That allows you to get into the heart space. When you're in the heart space, compassion is there.
Yep.
And healing can occur.
That's right.
Without it, you're still going to have, people who feel oppressed, which is, all BIPOC, people who feel oppressed constantly, what, white communities may call complaining or whatever. You're still going to have people going, hey, listen to my pain, listen to my hurt, listen to my story, listen, because it's just like having a middle child who's neglected. Yep. Or someone who's in pain is going to keep saying, I need validation. Mm-hmm. I fucking matter. Like, I need validation. So
the passion, man. And this is what makes me question whether or not I should be homeschooling, because by homeschooling you have all of the authority in what your kids learn, and here I am with my kids in public school, one of which is he only has 3 more years left of it. I want to ensure that what they're learning is fair learning.
Yeah.
So that's why I was asking, on behalf of those of us who are having our kids in public school, how can we take some of that homeschooling action and bring it to our kids?
I think it's just conversations. I know a lot of people, Asian American friends of mine who don't homeschool. Mm-hmm. It's just having conversations with them, making sure you have racial mirrors, like Ebony magazine and some other magazines. Back when I was in high school, they started to come out. It was a big deal. I think Tyra Banks led the way a little bit around that front. I'm not sure, don't quote me, but that was a big deal to be like, Black is beautiful, and here it is on the cover of a magazine. I didn't have that until later in college years, where we had a magazine, which is an Asian American magazine, and there was a magazine called Hyphen, which is all about the hyphenated identity. So I'm Asian American, we live in the hyphen. We're neither fully Asian, nor are we fully seen as American. We live in the hyphen, right?
In the hyphen.
Same thing with even New Yorkers, right? Puerto Ricans born in New York, they don't feel like they belong in Puerto Rico, but they're not fully American New Yorkers either. And so it was Hyphen magazine. And those 2 magazines made me feel seen.
Right.
Like the way Essence and Ebony magazine help Black girls feel seen. Mm-hmm. It's so important, representation, racial mirrors. So as public schoolers, I think just get more racial mirrors, be really conscious, choose that, BIPOC doll. And by the way, BIPOC, for those of you who don't know, and I'm starting to realize the last few years, many people don't know the term BIPOC, mm-hmm. It's Black, Indigenous, and people of color.
Right.
And another way to say it, Sherrie, my friend, is people of global majority. I just learned that.
Oh, people
a year
of
ago.
Global majority. That's so accurate.
Actual.
What is that? Let me write that down, because I want to make sure that
PEM, people of global majority. That is us, people of color, or people of global majority. But see how it's all spun, and no one questions how, people just think, oh, well, white people are the majority of this world because they're mostly in these Hollywood films that are seen all over. It's always white actors and white, all these movies. And you just naturally assume, okay, cool, that's who, run the world. And so the majority, they're not.
Yeah. And
this is not to bash on white communities.
Absolutely not. No. It's just, we take up space too. We take up space too. And I just want everybody to realize that we take up space. We're here.
And we need it for our children's healing, to heal future generations.
Yep.
If you're not talking about racism and decolonizing education, my belief is you're subconsciously passing on racism to your kids.
Yes, I agree. Yep, I agree. Because there are places where there are actual places here in the United States where there are white people who have never interacted with Black people.
Same, right here in my town.
Yeah.
They didn't grow up with any Asians at all.
Mm-hmm. And that should not happen here. That I don't think that should be happening, especially now.
Not in New York either.
No. No, but I could tell you something. What was interesting is that when I went to see the Woman King with Viola Davis, I saw it at the drive-in over there in New York, right? And I just thought for real that it wasn't going to be crowded or anything like that, because it's an all Black cast with maybe one white guy in it. And I don't even think he was white. I think he was Brazilian. Yeah. But I go there with my husband, and man, did African Americans show up and show out. That place was packed.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking to myself, are you all here and just, I don't see you? Or where did everybody come from?
In Warwick.
In Warwick, exactly. And sadly, I didn't see, at least the time that I went there, I didn't see anybody else other than people of color. And it's such a great movie. I wish white people would go see it, because it's an amazing tale of the Dominican people.
Yeah, you said you were shocked so many Black people came out, because we live by the mountain. Sherrie actually just lives half an hour from me on the other side of the Jersey border, but it's a predominantly white area. And so she was shocked seeing all these Black people come out for this wonderful movie. But I say they come out because they were hungry for healing.
Yes.
Hashtag hungry for healing.
Mm-hmm.
We're hungry for the representation in media.
Yes.
Hungry for the racial mirrors.
I literally cried when I saw us out there like that, and I'm feeling like this is what it must have felt like when people went to see Wakanda for the first, when it first came out. Mm-hmm. So this is what it was. This is why people went to the movies dressed in African wear. Mm-hmm. Like when I say they showed up and showed out for Wakanda, I can't wait for 11/11 to get here, because that's when part 2 is supposed to come out. I think I'm actually going to go to the movies to experience that. Like, I missed out on that, the first one, and I want to not miss out on it. Yeah, this month on the 11th. On 11/11 22. It's like you said, it's a healing. We're starting the healing process, and I wish all of BIPOC would have that,
we're just trying to raise our kids so differently now, right? We really want them to have this full support of having their faces on the screen. It's just an extended support system. Yeah, representation in media. I wasn't forced to assimilate. My parents never said, be as white as you can and go succeed. I think some other Asian families took that approach where we're not speaking Chinese in the house because you need to really know learn what it takes to succeed in this country where it's English speaking. It wasn't that rigid. My parents didn't push me to assimilate, but it was just wanting to belong, right? Like if you look different from somebody, you want to belong. So it was a survival thing.
Right.
So while I was assimilating, I'm trying to make sure my kids are not feeling that pull, not feeling that need to assimilate, because they're so fully in their own body, so fully comfortable in their own identity that they don't feel a pull to assimilate like I did.
Right. But how did that show up when you were still assimilating? Because you were saying while you were assimilating, you're teaching your kids to not assimilate. So if they're watching you assimilate, how
that was right. So that was my whole upbringing, right? So my whole upbringing, and then even my spiritual journey, as I was looking for spiritual mentors, it was kind of leaning in towards, that the white authoritative voice. And my own healing with internal racism started in 2018, slowly. And as I work to bring in racial mirrors, stuff that we didn't have growing up, right? As I expose my kids to the racial mirrors, it also heals me, and me being okay with my old friends calling me by my Chinese name again. Like that's a level of healing, even for my kids, because then now they're hearing that I'm accepting my Chinese name. Where, years before it was like, no, call me Renee, like I'm Renee now, right? Little things like that. I am just having these conversations with them. It all helps to kind of strip away. Healing the kids is healing us too.
Yes. They're our outer child.
Our inner child.
Our inner child meets our outer child. Our children are our outer child. Outer are our children. Yeah. Wow, man.
Yeah. So, but helping our kids honor their true identity as BIPOC children, definitely racial mirrors are essential, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Decolonizing history specifically is essential.
Yeah. Mirrors and having those conversations with them to have the balance of what they're learning in public school. They get the other side of it.
Mm-hmm.
That's key. Okay. So we need to check out Delina Price.
McFall or McFall, but she's wokehomeschooling.com.
Homeschooling.com.
If you go to Facebook, you can also just look up decolonizing parents to get into those communities.
Yeah.
There'll be great, book recommendations, sharing resources like that. You could look up anti-racist toys. So it's a real thing if you Google it. There are Facebook groups that I think one Facebook group is called Anti-Racist Play. And I don't know, something. It's anti-racist stuff. So where they make recommendations on toys of color, dolls of color made by people of color, stuff like that. So
yeah,
communities are out there. Just research and join them.
Yeah, that's definitely important to know that the communities are out there, because that's something. Honestly, that's not something that I would never think. I would have never thought of that, to check for that, use that language.
Anti-racist toys. Yeah.
Yeah, like I would have never thought about that, and that there's like a community out there. I am going to be doing that today. Perusing the groups and seeing which one I fit in better with.
Yeah. So I hope this conversation was helpful for all you viewers and listeners.
Yeah.
We're just so committed to the healing process, healing our children and next generation.
Yes, breaking those generational curses.
And just everyone, regardless of race, like we're just committed to your peace, joy, and freedom.
Yeah, exactly. Absolutely.
And as we walk down our journey, we want to take you with us.
Yes, we want you with us. We definitely do.
Will you let them know, Sherrie, how they can contact us and get some
yes.
with
You
us?
can reach us at Renee Faith. You can reach Renee at reneefaith.com/coaching, and that's how you can reach out to her to have a free consultation, a free conversation with her. And for myself, I'm at sherrielanell.com/application, where you also can set up a time to speak with me. And both of our conversations are free. Yeah.
Yeah. Let's see what's possible. Let's get healing.
Yep. Let's get to healing. So I think that's all right. Do we have anything else to add?
No, I think we touched on a lot. I would love to hear from all you viewers on YouTube. Write down in the comments what stood out to you, whether or not you homeschool. If you're a homeschooling mom, I would love to, know that you're part of our audience. Yeah. Thank you so much for joining us.
Yes, thank you
for this episode.
Yeah, and you will see us next week. Aha, I got it right.
Got it right.
I got it right. You will see us next week. So thanks for joining us. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. And we'll talk with you soon.
Yeah. Bye.
Thank you so much for listening. We hope you enjoyed this new episode. And if you did, please leave us a like and subscribe. Also, feel free to let us know what topics you'd like to see covered in future episodes. Get in touch in the comments. And visit us on our websites, reneefaith.com and sherrielandell.com, to learn more about how we can serve you on your journey. All links below in the description. See you next week's episode. Bye now.